In regard to the
All right,
question
we're
of
good.
chapter 12, in what ways did you change learned about change your thoughts educating students with low incidence and physical disabilities? Your group should spend about 5 minutes discussing this topic.
What do you guys think?
It definitely, with just reading about it, I mean, you hear about incidents here and there. Like, I just didn't have I wasn't exposed to a lot of that in any of the schools I've ever gone to. So it's something like reading about, and they do really good about like creating scenarios and like examples to kind of like that are a lot more relatable in my opinion. So it kind of just exposed me to it a little more than I experienced with, but it didn't really change my thoughts because I didn't have a lot about it, if that
No
makes sense.
precon. I was gonna say I didn't have any preconceived notions about it because I really didn't. I was just uninformed. I really didn't know a whole lot about it. So yeah, I was gonna say everything they told me, I was just like, oh, it's basically I didn't switch anything. I just learned more.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, what did you guys say to that first question on the chapter 12? The imagine a 14-year-old adolescent who cannot stand or walk, does not talk or gesture, requires assistance with eating, wears a diaper, has intensive medical needs, and is generally unresponsive to sound and touch. What is the school's responsibility to this child?
I guess the responsibility for the child is to make sure they have the proper environment to learn correctly, right? I guess that's every child's right.
Yeah, when I at first when I read it, I thought about it like, what do I need to do for each, like for everything that it was stating that the student needed accommodated with. Like I was thinking, what would I do for that? What would I do for that? Rather than thinking about it like as a big picture, like what can you do for that student? If that makes sense. I was trying to accommodate everything rather than just accommodating the student in like a general manner.
Yeah, I said something about maintaining a safe and supportive learning environment that accommodates them, but also doesn't, like not single them out, but you know what I mean? Like treat them
Give them
as
the proper
nearly as
treatment.
possible to the
Yeah.
rest of the children.
I agree. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
When I saw this question, I was wondering if, like, for this specific case, if it would be a school's responsibility or if it would be more of like an in care center, like a state hospital or something like that, just because of everything that there is. Like, to me, it sounds like it's a little bit out of a school's capability, and seems like somebody who'd need more of a nurse around all the time with like a specialized nurse, just not a school nurse.
Well, I know that I went to a pretty big school, and even in elementary school, we had a student that was pretty similar to the one described in the question. And she was in a really small, specialized classroom, all from like K through 12. But she did go to school like everybody else. They made it work. I don't really know how, because I never really, I don't know, I guess I never asked, but she did have a similar school experience.
That's crazy.
Yeah, how do you think it differs from like a small school?
Oh, go
How do you
ahead.
think it differs? How do you think it differs from like a small school or like a big school? Do you think they get better treatment in like a bigger school or a smaller school because they can be more? But the thing about a smaller school is they have less specialists, less special people to make sure the student has the proper education. Do you guys think a bigger school or smaller school is more influential?
Well, I think that in a bigger school, there's more opportunity to spread out students, maybe. Because in my schools were really big, and students with needs like this one, they were able to have a smaller ratio of instructors and helpers to students so that they each got the assistance that they needed for everything. But I feel like in a smaller school, you'd have less of an opportunity to have those ratios. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it also would matter if the small school was a specialized school, and that's what made it small or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think either way, whether like you said at the beginning, like a big school gives you the opportunity to spread it out, but a small school allows you to like, depending on the amount of staff in that school, maybe accommodate a student even more because they have more of like a 1-to-1 like ratio for student to teacher, like in those kind of situations, if that makes sense.
But then it would also
But
come down to funding. Smaller
Yeah.
schools usually don't get as much funding as the bigger schools do. And I guess that could put a limitation on them.
That's true too.
All right, so what's the next question?
Did you guys watch the well, there were 2 videos and 2 readings just above this list of questions?
yes.
Did you get a chance to look through those? Okay.
Yeah.
The next one's about the little video with the blind deaf child. And I actually really thought that was a pretty good way of showcasing life as a blind deaf kid.
Mm-hmm.
The way that his parents talked about it, how they said that people go, "Oh, that's such a shame," and they say, "Well, don't say that. He has a fantastic life. He's happy, and he doesn't know any different."
Yeah.
I think that really,
They thought about it in a very positive manner throughout the entire video.
yeah, and I think that's a really interesting way of thinking about it.
And they're not letting it like hold them back or hold him back in any way. Like they're right, he doesn't know any better, so this is a good life to him.
Mhm.
It's a really sad thing to think about, but at the same time, it's better than him thinking like his life is
Yeah,
bad, or, like, you know.
yeah. Like people can say it's such a shame to so many disabilities, but I think so many people are. How do I even say it? Like unaware that you can still live a nice, happy, great life.
Yeah. It's not, they're not letting it affect their life. And I thought that was really awesome.
What reminds you of that one video we watched a long time ago? I think it was like a couple weeks ago. All those people that had like autism and stuff, but they had like very, very normal lives. Remember that video? They like lived by themselves and stuff. They had like
Oh, yeah,
dogs.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what kind of reminded me of. And like, yeah, like they had all girlfriends and like, they had like extremely normal lives.
Yeah, I think sometimes people think that if you have a disability, you can't live a life just like any other person.
Yeah,
Most of it's
exactly.
there. I feel like for most people with disabilities, people who don't have disabilities kind of have this, I don't want to say mythological, but they have like a very skewed perspective of what it actually means to have a disability. Like they think it's the worst thing in the world and you can never overcome it and there's no resources for you. So they're all like, oh, well, bless your little heart, you have to go through this kind of a deal. But when you actually have a disability, you work through it, you live your life, you're happy.
Like Haley was kind of saying, there is depending on the people in the family that this affects, like you can choose to look at this and like, okay, are we going to let this like negatively affect their lives, or are we going to like just keep living our lives and just be happy about it and make the best of it, which I think I don't think you find a situation where it's like somebody's in between. It's either like they're negative about it or they're really positive about it and they work through it and they make their lives just as good regardless, if that makes sense.
Although somebody with disabilities will go through phases where they view it as a negative thing.
Yeah.
And they'll turn around and view it as a positive thing.
No, yeah, and I agree with that. I don't think there's definitely going to be obstacles and bumps in the road, but for the most part, I mean, they're dealing with something, depending on the disability and the severity of it, like could be dealing with something pretty big in their family. And like there's an assignment that we did, I believe it was for this module or the last one, where it was like talking about the divorce rate of families and like all the things that can affect families, like the money part of it and all that. and regardless, I think that's going to be stressful. Like, if money doesn't stress you out, then I know it does for me, but there's definitely going to be situations that they're going to face that are going to be negative, and they can choose to work through it and make the best of it, or they can, like you're saying, like they could take it differently. So it's definitely going to depend, and I think that you're not going to go through it all without anything being negative, but it's the way that you continue and work from there, if that makes sense.
Well, it's not necessarily like a matter of the stressors that we necessarily talked about last week. When you're talking about someone specifically with a disability, they actually have more of like an internal fight where even if you gave them all the money in the world and took away all the stressors we talked about last week, it would still have like an internal battle with their disability, and then they go through periods when they're fine with it. And does that make sense? Like, it's not necessarily anything
Yeah.
that the outside world could attribute to.
Mhm.
It's just the disability itself and how it impacts that person's life. It becomes like an internal battle and not an exterior battle.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Gethin appears to have a terrific amount of resources available to him, the least of which is certainly not an incredible family that provides lots of learning opportunities. What is the role of schools for students without such resources available to them? What about society in general? I think that schools, for students like Gethin, I think they should provide just a safe and comforting environment that might,
Yeah.
since that might be something that they don't experience in the rest of the world. Somewhere where they can have learning opportunities that are
Accommodated for that student.
Yes, exactly.
Because they're going to be different than obviously other students. So just making that student, like you said, comfortable, I think is a really big thing. Like, and depending on the age of the student, when they start, if this disability makes it to where they're aware of what is going on with them. I mean, obviously I wouldn't know because I don't experience these things, but if I were to guess, like once they get into like middle school or on the verge of high school, I'm sure there's times where if they're aware, it's kind of like, I don't know if embarrassing is the word, but they know they're different.
Yeah.
And I feel like making them comfortable in their environment and making their situation the best it can be for them is going to be like the main learning goal. Because I think depending on the disability, that's going to be like the main part of it, but it's going to determine what they can and can't learn, if that makes sense. Like, they may be coming to school every day for something completely different than me or you or someone else, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, at my high school, they made it so, and I don't know if this is like something a lot of high schools do, but they would let the students, like, they had their own, like, resource room, and they would get to come around, and a lot of the students would get excited because they would get to deliver the notes in the classes, or they'd have like little jobs, and that's kind of like stuff we've discussed, like activities we've done. I remember reading like there was a scenario where it said this student got to go do this job every day and they looked forward to it. I think it was the one about the mail or something from a while ago.
Oh yeah, the one with the kid that wanted to go to Blockbuster.
Yes, and he got to deliver the mail. They like get to do things like that, and that's something they get to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
That might be something where they're learning like a responsibility or learning to do a certain skill, or they have a goal to reach by the end of the day and stuff like that. Like, it may be different, but the learning
Exactly. It doesn't have to be like
learning-
educational goals or anything. Yeah.
What was that?
It doesn't have to be like an educational goal. It could just be like you said, like just helping around the school. Like remember that one they talked about when he was delivering the mail.
Yeah.
Just anything like that, just responsibility like that. Just learning accountability.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like the point I'm trying to like prove is like they might be learning, their goals may be different than ours, but in the big picture, we're kind of learning the same thing. Like, but they are learning in a different way than I might be learning it.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Right. What's the next question?
What one are we on? As you reviewed the myths and realities of the gifted and talented student, what surprised you? Let me open it up again just to read through them one more time. Oh, there was one that I was looking at. GT kids have it made and will succeed in life no matter what. They're going to make it on their own. They don't need any special help in school or anywhere else. But the reality, some are going to drop out and are dropping out. Too many of them make it doing things that are unacceptable. Everybody needs help and encouragement to make the most of him or herself. And I just thought, like, it is so true that people think that gifted and talented students don't need any help because, I don't know, because they think they're just overall better, but they're still students that are learning and growing.
You need to nurture
Yeah.
that education. You have to nurture. You can't just be like, oh, you know what, they get it. You know, maybe they can get real good at it. Maybe they can be the best at it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
nurture the education stuff. You can't just be like, oh, okay, yeah, he's got it. You know, Mike understands how to do fractions. I don't want to teach. I'm not going to teach him fractions anymore. You know, stuff like that. You got to make sure you nurture everything. You got to make sure like every student is. There's obviously going to be students in certain subjects that's going to be oodles and gobs ahead of other students. That's just going to happen, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Sure that no matter what, you're not like leaving them behind just because you think that you have an idea that they have an idea that they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. What did you guys think about the list of myths?
There were some that were like, okay, that makes sense, and then there was others that definitely surprised me. I'm trying to find the one that there was one that myth 4, it says teachers love to have gifted and talented students in their classes, and this is reality. Some do, but some don't. Certain people are uncomfortable with gifted and talented students and get defensive when they suspect that their students know more than they do. That one I was kind of like, yeah, okay, it makes sense. Some teachers I don't think it's that some teachers do and some teachers don't, and I hope it wouldn't be like that, but I feel like it's more like some teachers have the patience and have the, not confidence, I don't know the word I'm looking for, like the ability to do it, and some just don't have that, almost that connection or that, like in everything we've done, I feel like they've talked about patience. And some teachers, I mean, if you're dealing with students, first of all, and you're going to the education field, like, I think that you should have patience or be aware that you need to have some sort of patience in order to deal with kids in general.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to things like a student with a disability, you may have to have a little more patience just because depending on the disability, you may have to help them a little extra than others. So it's like that one I was kind of like, I think you have to be somewhat aware of that when you're going into the education field, like,
Yeah.
and be okay with it. I don't know. That one kind of caught me off
I was
guard.
gonna say like, because what did that myth say? It's like, so the myth is like teachers are always happy to see it. I mean, I guess not all teachers. Says all teachers. I guess not all teachers are, but I feel like most teachers should. I don't want to say challenge because children's education is not a challenge. You know, it's something that you need to make sure you take very seriously. But it's also something that a teacher can help develop their own teaching style. You know, I feel like if I had a student who had, you know, anything like that in my class, you know, I'd be like, you know what, new challenge. You know, like I said, I don't want to make it seem like, you know, obviously education is not a challenge. You know, you got to make sure you take it seriously. But you know, it's something you can say, hey, you know what, I can grow from this.
What can I do to help this student to the best of my ability?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's not like any other student in the class. You know, you got to make sure, yeah, like you said, Drew, how can I teach this child to the best of my ability?
I agree.
The one that I thought was interesting was myth 6, where it says that the gifted and talented student must be constantly challenged and kept busy or they'll become lazy. I thought that was interesting because I do think that after a prolonged period of time where they're not being challenged, they're going to realize that they can do whatever they're doing in their sleep. So they're going to be less likely to want to do it. And I don't think that that's all attributed to boredom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that one, I didn't really agree with that one.
Yeah, there was a few on here I was kind of like, well, maybe.
Right.
I don't know.
They're like just very, very weird,
They were
like rhetorical
interesting.
things. You know what I'm saying? Just like weird. Yeah. A lot of like, yeah, I was gonna say a lot of them were like, they kind of just like put every teacher like under one blanket, and they're like, all teachers. You know, it's like you're not obviously not all teachers. Never is ever happened in a million years that all teachers believe in the same thing.
Yeah. And everyone has their own style of doing things and their own preferences, and I think maybe that's why I disagree with it. I don't know. But I think it's something you're going to come across a lot as a teacher. There's definitely, within the school district, there's going to be a lot of things that you run into that you're like, I mean, I'll do it, but I don't agree with it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's something like you're gonna run into administrators. You're gonna run into everybody. You know, you're gonna run into a whole cornucopia of people that are gonna say different things.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
The
Another
thing
one
is
that I looked
about
at-
like that is how much do you take in from like outside sources? How much do you do in your own? You know, I mean, obviously there's obviously certain teachers, you know, who have way more experience with this and stuff. But how much of their experience take into your own teaching style?
Yeah.
Another one of the ones I looked at, though, was myth number 10. The gifted, talented student is just an oddball or freak. The GT students are weak and puny. They're not very athletic or healthy. It just made me think of all those stereotypes from, like, TV shows that the jocks are the big, like, brutish, dumb kids, and then the GT students or the really smart students are the tiny, nerdy, quiet, and it just, I don't know. It kind of made me laugh a little bit that that's such a widely held presumption.
Yeah. Should we go to the next one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's do it.
From what you saw of the pilot episode of Head of the Class, how do the characters in the show relate to the different gifted through categories: cognitive, academic, creative, leadership, and visual or performing arts? What are your thoughts about the principal's expectations for the teacher? No, what other thoughts you have in it? Anybody have their thoughts on that one?
What was the question again? Can you read that one more time?
It was the second to last one, just about the head of the pilot
Oh, the
episode.
TV show? Yeah.
Just kind of our thoughts on it.
I don't know. You know what? To be honest with you, when did Head of the Class come out? Head of the Class came out. Hold on, let me check. 1986. So it was such a different time. Like we had so much students with mental disabilities. Like I feel like in the last even 10 years has advanced so highly. I mean, 1986. Like what did we really know? You know.
Oh, Drew just left.
We just lost Drew. What do you guys think about the Head of the Class?
I thought it was interesting
Pilot.
how when the teacher walked in, they portrayed all of the students as not very sociable. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Oh, or you lost me, maybe? I don't know.
But you're back.
Oh,
You're
you're
good.
back. Cool.
Okay.
I was just saying how I thought it was interesting how when the instructor walked into the classroom, the students all were just doing their stuff. They looked up at him and then they went back. They weren't sociable. They weren't talkative among each other or to him.
Mhm.
I thought that was an interesting way of portraying GT students as to themselves and not sociable like I would guess that other average students would be.
Yeah. Kind of like I guess it's not a stereotype because I don't really stereotype. I wouldn't necessarily categorize them like that, but maybe for that person, that's kind of a stereotype to them. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe, since it was from the 80s, maybe that was a stereotype that was there.
Then or something. Yeah, that's something interesting to think about.
Mm-hmm.
It's a time difference, I'm gonna say like I was saying, yeah, I'm in 1986 from 1990. I think let me look it up. Yeah, 1986. So I mean, like I was saying, like even in the last like 10 years, like even like since 2000, how much we've gained in knowledge of everything. I mean, that show was what, 20 years ago? No, not 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Think about how much time has gone by between times. None of us, have no idea what it was like back then. We weren't even born back then. So like the information back then was just so different. I don't want to say wrong, but different.
I feel
Yeah.
like in that time, people still thought that they had like the nerds, and those were the people who wore pocket protectors and had broken glasses. And I think that those kinds of characters were all portrayed as someone who wasn't sociable, someone who feared for their safety at school because they knew that they were going to be bullied for being smart.
Mhm.
And so I think that they're either still in that time frame or they're just moving out of that time frame where they're trying to kind of weaken the stereotype against people who are supposedly nerdy because they were smart.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Should we go to the next one?
Let's do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So the last one says,
How long have we been going?
with the time you have available, which would be about 5 to 7 minutes, which I think we spent a lot of time on other things, so we only have a few more minutes.
We've been going for like 25 minutes right now.
Okay, so we could just 5 on this. Discuss what a twice exceptional student might look like in your future classroom using the provided characteristics from the handout you were to review.
What handout was that?
Talk about the twice exceptional students and what they might look like in your classroom.
No, what was the handout?
It's that last link on the
Oh, is that it?
instruction.
Okay. There's a handout. I think a handout, I always just think like something he like emails to us or like puts directly to us. But I guess, yeah, just the link, yeah. That's all that Jeremy's got time for.
Yeah, what do you guys think?
I mean, I think there's not one answer for this, and I don't think you really expected that either, but there's definitely a lot of different scenarios that you can have. Like one of these on here says, talking about her daughter, didn't produce much written work in school, even though her thoughtful observations and questions added an immense amount to the classes she attended. She was placed in the accelerated courses because it felt that even if she was not good at producing material, being in the higher level classes would stand a better chance of meeting her intellectual needs. After a short period of time in her English course and without any attempt to strategize a way she could have success, her teacher excused her from the class, stating that she did not see the gift in Marcia. The teacher felt that any child in an accelerated course should not require and did not deserve any kind of accommodation. Marcia did take the SAT test 4 years earlier than normal and scored high enough to qualify for attendance at the National Talent Search program in English.
Oh no, Drew left again.
Yeah, I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, honestly, there's so much there to process that, like, I don't even know.
Yeah, that's so much information. I was gonna say it's just like a buckshot of information just coming right at you. It's kind of weird to like see how that information can be utilized.
Are you guys talking about for the characteristics of twice exceptional students, or are we on a different question?
I wasn't sure where she was reading from, actually, because I was looking at the characteristics.
Yeah, because that's how we were asked to read for the twice exceptional children.
Yeah, I'm not sure what she was reading through.
It'd be nice if she's here. She'll be back here.
But what she was talking about, though, was like a student that needs an accommodation for their learning, but they are gifted and talented. And I think that's not something I've ever seen in the classroom. Like, from all the classrooms that I've had experience being in, I've never been around a student that was both. I've never had experience with twice exceptional.
I think that like the main disability that comes to my mind that could fit in this twice exceptional would be someone with autism, because there are a lot of people with autism that have a really high intelligence. They used to call it Asperger's,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a high functioning form of autism, but now it's just all autism.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of those that ended up being like child prodigies. There was one I researched in high school that was, oh man, I think he was in college by the time he was 12, but he found out that he had Asperger's when he was 2. And he was just like a mathematical genius and was really good at science. And he is trying to disprove, I believe, some of Einstein's theories. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's done a couple of different TED Talks that were really interesting. Let me see if I can find his name again. Oh, it was Jacob Barnett. I'm pretty sure that's his last name.
Jacob Barnett.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about autism when I was looking through this, but that is a good point, because there are so many autistic students that need assistance in something but excel so much in something else.
Yep, his name was Jacob Barnett, and when he was 12, is when he pretty much became famous for what he does, and he's studying physics, and he's expanded Einstein's theory. He hasn't quite disproved it, but he's working on disproving it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and he's done a novel on astrophysics. Like right now, he's 18 to 19 years old.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah. But
Yeah,
definitely
different-
autism is the main thing that comes to my mind when I think of a twice exceptional student.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Well,
Yeah,
I
and it's like just different characteristics yield different results, right? Different methods and different things yield different results for different students, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
He pretty much skipped all of high school so that he could go straight to college, which I thought was interesting.
Dang, I wish I could have done that.
yeah, it's like
Right.
money.
Yeah.
But if you guys are ever interested, you should look at his TED Talks. They're really fun to watch.
Yeah, I've seen some of just the like. Did you say TED Talks?
Yeah, the ones from Jacob Barnett, though.
Oh, yeah.
Those are interesting.
I've watched a lot of the TED Talks through other classes and just cause before, and those are they're super interesting.
And then one that doesn't fit quite as well, but still fits, like, if you're looking at the more creative aspect than the intelligence aspect, but even some with the intelligence aspect, someone with ADD or ADHD fits into my mind, because
that's what I was thinking about.
They're a lot more creative, but they have problems showing their intelligence, whereas someone with autism doesn't have as hard of a chance of showing their intelligence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was thinking.
So those would be the disabilities I would say would be most likely to have the two sides to them.
Well, I think that's everything.
Yeah, I think so too.
And we've been going for like a half hour.
Okay.
Sounds
So for
good.
the next one, or we wanted to stick with the same time? I don't even know if we have any more or what the deal is.
You know, if we do, let's just do same time, same place.
Okay. Sound good.
Perfect. Awesome. I want to post this right now. So
Okay, thank you.
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Ladies, have a good weekend. All right.
You too.
All right.
You
Thank you.
too.